This is breaking, Lions fans. The kind of late window movement that doesn't show up on graphics, yet but already has people around the league checking calendars and counting snaps. The board just shifted, and there's a clean path for Detroit to turn a soft spot on the depth chart into a winning edge before the deadline. With a player whose motor doesn't slow in the fourth quarter and whose hidden rap technique travels in any stadium, any weather, any script. Welcome back to Lions News Fan Report. I'm bringing you a precise, no-nonsense breakdown of a live scenario that touches roster construction, cap timing, medical checkpoints, and playoff football reality. Here's what I'm going to put on the table for you. How the market opened in the AFC after a brutal start for a certain team. Why Detroit's second level needs an injection of speed in finishing today. What the cost structure looks like for a midseason deal that doesn't mortgage the future. How the on-field fit supercharges our pressure menu with Hutchinson and Branch. And the risk profile you and I have to be honest about before pushing chips in. I won't drop the name until I've shown you exactly where he plugs in and why it changes the way we win downs in December. Context first. Detroit's offense can trade punches with anyone for long stretches. But this season's version of complementary football still needs one more consistent closer on defense, not a headline chaser. A chain mover on the other side of the ball. The guy who turns 2nd and 7 into 3rd and 11 because he knifes the B-gap on time and finishes the play clean. We've got dudes who hit. We've got dudes who communicate. But when we face tempo or a coordinator who lives in option routes to stress linebackers' eyes, the margin gets thin. What are the pain points? Tackle volume without missed spikes on long drives, angles to the perimeter when offenses widen us out with motion, and the need for one more consistent green dog threat who punishes backs that stay in protection. You add a linebacker who plays with violent feet, sees the screen game early, and doesn't panic in coverage versus option stems, and your entire third down identity stabilizes. That's where this lane begins. The market, meanwhile, moved because an AFC team with high expectations stumbled out of the gate and is suddenly a prime seller. When that happens, veteran pieces on short-term control become conversation starters for contenders with clear needs. That's Detroit right now, a front office that knows its window, a locker room that knows its standard, and a coaching staff that has the teaching capacity to onboard a high-motor linebacker fast. The outline of the deal lives where smart trades always live. Reasonable draft capital with an escalator tied to snaps and team result. Salary that fits without cutting into next year's flexibility. And a medical timeline that gives you live reps before Thanksgiving, so you're not buying an idea, you're buying production. Scheme fit is where this goes from interesting to urgent. Think about our base looks and how we've evolved the pressure picture. Simulated four-man rushes that steal a gap with post-snap movement. Creepers that park a defensive end in coverage just long enough to mess with protection rules. And those mugged gaps where we demand the center make a bad choice. Now picture a Will who gets from tackle to tackle like his hair's on fire but stays square on contact. A blitzer who times the snap without giving it away. A finisher who arrives with leverage and leaves the ball on the ground. Put him next to Jack Campbell and in front of Brian Branch, and you've got a triangle that erases the easy stuff. Angle routes, flats that become free yards, tight end sticks that bleed you on a drive. You also turbocharge Hutchinson's. Life because backs stop scanning out so casually when they know the will. Triggers off their set. That half second of. Uncertainty is another pressure win for 97. All of that is real football, not rumor candy. Cost next. I'm not playing fantasy GM. I'm laying out the lanes that actually clear. A mid-round pick with a playtime escalator into day 2. Compensation is realistic for a linebacker of this caliber on short-term control, paired with a late conditional that triggers on team performance. You don't touch your blue-chip capital. You don't tear a hole in a working rotation. And you leave yourself room to do something smaller on the edges if injuries pop later. Cap-wise, this lives in the responsible now. Flexible later. Bucket. You absorb the remainder of the year without stress, And if the fit is the fit, you open a postseason extension window on Detroit's terms, payout that rewards snap count and production, guarantees that don't box you in, and structure that protects the comp pick formula if things somehow don't stick. The risk? It's not hidden. You're buying a linebacker coming off a stint on injured reserve, and you cannot wish that away. That's why the snap ramp plan matters. Package him early in money downs and special calls. Let the conditioning chase the roll, and keep the hamstrings honest. If that timeline lands before the trade deadline in early November, you get the one thing you need from any deadline acquisition: a month to calibrate the fit at NFL speed before the games become elimination games. And now that you see the board, I'll say the name you've been waiting for. The linebacker I'm talking about is Quincy Williams, the tone setter from New York whose tape pops for the same reasons coaches love him and offenses hate him. He closes grass fast. He doesn't bounce off ball carriers, and he plays through people without losing balance. Williams is that rare profile, a hitter whose best trait is actually his control. When offenses try to manipulate his eyes with jet motion and orbit action, he throttles without freezing, squeezes the window, and forces a check down into a tackle for almost no gain. When you ask him to be the extra in the fire zone, he shows up with a plan, not a hope. Strike, separate, finish. Drop him into Detroit's structure, and you don't just get speed. You get intent. On our third down menus, he becomes the hammer that makes offenses call protections they dislike, mug him, and threaten the guard's inside hip. Force the back to step into the A-gap, and you've either got a free rusher or you've just bought Hutch a one-on-one on the edge. In zone, play him as the hook-to-seam lifeguard who reads the quarterback's shoulder and smothers the tight end's pivot. In man, let him live on backs, where his burst cancels option routes and the ball arrives into contact. On early downs, he's the antidote to those perimeter runs that turn 5 yards into 20, because the force defender gets a bad angle. Quincy's whole thing is good angles at full speed. That is exactly what you invest in at the deadline, a trait that solves a repeatable problem. The human side isn't small either. Quincy's energy is contagious without being performative. He plays like he's late for a flight, but he communicates like a pro. Drop that into a room that already has leadership, and you get urgency without noise. That matters when you're coming out of a 13-play drive and the body language can go either way. With him on the field, the huddle feels shorter. And that has scoreboard value you can't fake. So do I make the move? Here's my straight answer. If the price settles in the band we just outlined, mid-round capital with a snaps escalator, clean medical recheck, Detroit-friendly option to talk extension later, I'm in. We're not buying a logo. We're buying a solution that shows up on third down, in the red zone, and in 2 minutes. If the ask climbs into premium picks or forces you to give up a young role player with plus traits, I pivot because the roster is strong enough to chase a smaller ad at edge or nickel and still be dangerous in January. But if the lane stays reasonable, Quincy Williams is exactly the kind of in-season bet that fits the identity this team has been building. Fast, physical, accountable football that travels. Before I close, I want your read, because this channel runs on honest fan intelligence. If the medical lines up and the cost is reasonable, are you all in on Quincy to Detroit? Or do you hold the picks and trust internal growth the rest of the way? Tell me your threshold. What's the max you're willing to pay? And what snap ramp plan makes sense to you in November? Drop your thoughts below. I'll be in the comments, and I want specifics, not vibes. My view in one line: a healthy Quincy Williams gives this defense a finishing gear it doesn't consistently have right now. And that's worth real draft capital if the terms respect Detroit's long-term build. If you want more breakdowns like this, where we cut the fluff and talk real football with real timelines, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and share this with that Lions fan who texts you after every third down stop. I'll keep you ahead of the curve with quick updates and deep analysis the minute anything moves.